Welcome back to the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. This is the bottom line where real stories meet real numbers. In each of these episodes, we bring you real world investing insights, strategies, stories from our own deals and experience in the field. At the end of this episode, we will answer a question from our very own 7FF podcast listeners. One of my favorite parts. I'm co-hosted today with the one and only Dr. Sheri Fluellen. Dr. Sheri, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'm really excited just to dive right in. Today, we're going to talk about the psychology of sales and this epiphany that you had yesterday. I was so fascinated. Lindsay and I were sitting in the office and we were like, oh, that's really interesting. So let's dive in to that specific topic and what the epiphany was that you had on sales and how it relates to getting deals and working with our sellers and that kind of thing.
Yes. And I know that there are going to be a lot of listeners that are in a similar boat. For a little bit of context, my husband and I were just at a 7-figure flipping event in Park City. And we got to be in a room with dozens of other investors. How many were there? Were there at least 60 to 75?
131.
See, this is how bad I am at estimating the number of people in a room. But the cool thing is it felt smaller in that there were some super cool connections. But regardless, one of the things that I noticed as my husband and I were talking, we are in the middle of just launching our first or the beginning stages of a direct to seller campaign. So all of our flipping up to this point has come in from other lead sources and wholesalers and leads that my husband has received as a real estate agent and a broker, but it was insufficient to really build the level of business that we wanted. So we had to bite the bullet and jump into direct to seller marketing. So we are not the only people that are doing that right now. There's at least a dozen of other investors that were at the Park City event that I know are in the very same spot as us, that have just started maybe a few months in, or maybe, are ready to send the mailers out within the next month. And one of the things that I noticed with my husband, so he is the sales guy. His entire adult life has been sales. And he has really gotten really good at it. And over the last 16 years, his sales job has been being a real estate agent and a real estate broker. And he's really excelled in that. He's always been top in the brokerage that he's been a part of. He's always gotten awards for the amount of deals he closes and all of this sort of stuff. And it looks easy. He comes back from a potential seller appointment, and 95% of the time he's like, yep, got it. And so I know he's really good at it. And so it's been hard for me to see him struggle a little bit as he started to have conversations with potential sellers for investments. And he's good. So I've just been wondering, what is going on? I don't understand this. So I had an opportunity to talk with him a couple of days ago, and then followed that up with being part of the intuitive sales call that 7-figure flipping has on Wednesday mornings. And so my husband was on that. I was on that. There were some of our other investor friends on it. And my husband was talking about one of the sales calls he had. And it just I had this epiphany. And I guarantee that there are some other people that might be kind of stuck in thinking about how they're approaching their sales calls as an investor, that they're approaching it maybe a little differently than what is helpful or what's actually going to get the job done. And I wanted to bring a little bit of my psychology background into this. Adam, are you okay with that?
Yes, I definitely want to hear it. Can I frame a little bit too?
Yes, please.
What's interesting is we have, over the years in our community, we have had investors who are doing primarily heavily direct to seller marketing. So these are like postcards, I'll buy your house cash, Google ads, the whole thing. And as the market got constrained in 2022, as the interest rates went up, a lot of people looked for ways to source deals at no cost, basically buying from wholesalers, buying off the MLS, because we have a lot of really savvy house flippers, which means you don't have to like wholesale, which, you know, you can buy the houses. And we've had a shift. We've had this shift where, you know, people kind of pulled back on spending $100,000, $50,000 a month on marketing. And now we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence because the playing field has kind of thinned out. There's a lot of less junk wholesalers out there. And now the flippers who are trying to add a few more flips a month, 2-3 more flips a month, maybe, or a year, are starting to go direct to seller and get more margin, which is a whole thing, which I can't wait to talk about. Now, I wanted to kind of lay that context before we got too deep.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I appreciate that, Adam, because we are definitely had that moment of realization that we're not in control of our business because we are beholden to people feeding us deals. And I didn't want to be in that position. So that was the significant realization we had that shifted us into mailers. Now we're so far away from $50,000 a month. We've committed to $6,000 a month in marketing spend in our mailer campaign. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And so I'm sitting here like, what the heck is going on? Why is my husband not hitting the conversion numbers that he's used to? So let me set the stage first with a little bit of a psychology geeky stuff, but I think this is really, really important. So this is something I learned as a psychologist in my training. And actually, I learned about this first when I was a captain in the Air Force and I was running what's called the ADAPT program, Alcohol and Drug Addiction Prevention and Treatment Program. And I learned about this cool thing called the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. A lot of words. Basically what it is, it's this researched model of how people move through behavior change. And this is applicable to any sort of behavior change. Specifically, it's been most applied to the alcohol and addictions fields for alcoholics, people that are using drugs. It's also, fun fact, it's also being taught to physicians, which I think is amazing. So when you're meeting with a physician and you're overweight or you're smoking and your doctor's like, you need to quit, they shouldn't really tell you that you need to quit. They actually are being trained on how to ask questions and elicit your change based on this trans-theoretical model. So what is this model? And then how does it apply to this challenge that my husband is having? The model basically outlines there's 5 different stages that we all go through when we think about or actually change something, and it doesn't matter what it is. And by identifying where the person that we're talking to, the seller, is in these 5 stages, it is a game changer. So first I'm going to run through the 5 stages, and then I'm going to kind of apply what I saw with my husband and how he could shift things a little bit. And we've had this conversation. This is not news to him, but how he could shift things a little bit to be more effective. Adam, did you want to add anything before I kind of talk a little bit about those 5 stages?
Yeah, I think just real quick, some of the things that we do in our sales process, about 3 years ago, we changed our sales process to be less of what you would see in the real estate space, where everybody was asking the same questions, getting the same training from John Martinez. And we went out and got different sales training. We spent a bunch of money in our company, and then we iterated on it for a year to come to ultimately end on the intuitive sales process, which is what Blackjack's Lindsay is in Blackjack. She teaches this to our community. And there are a couple pieces of this that are like neurological base. And it's about the one thing she says fundamentally, sales is change. And that's where this comes from.
Yes.
And we really talk a lot about detaching ourselves from the result and getting our sellers to attach to the result. And these people are that you're talking about, that you're comparing them to, addicts and whatnot, they're not it's not logical. Like, why would somebody be an alcoholic, a crackhead, all the things that can go south for any of us, really. It's emotional based thinking. So the ability, something you do so well just in conversation, is the ability to ask specific questions, but to ask great questions to help people come along on that journey to see the change that they need and make the decision that they need to make. As it relates to a house, we know it's not always about price. In fact, the deals that we do, it's almost seldomly about price. So I love the information you'd put out about this psychological model and the different stages of change, because, when Lindsay's talking to our community and teaching the intuitive sales process, she says sales is just change. Like, how do we're trying to get somebody to attach to that result, which is a change.
Yeah. And I love that you brought out the logical versus the emotional, because I think I get easily pulled into the sales side of logical, because I am more of a logical person than an emotional person. That sounds weird. I am highly emotional, but I am very logical. But sometimes I'm not so aware of how the emotions feed the logic. And so I can come in being like, well, this is obviously the right decision, and completely blow past the emotional side of what's happening on the other side. I mean, if those listening are listeners, if you have ever had a conversation with somebody in pre-foreclosure or foreclosure, you know that they're not thinking logically. It is 100% or 99% emotional. And so this model of behavior change.
Can I give an example of that?
Yes.
Like an illogical decision that was made. Last year, we had a person in Florida going into foreclosure, and they were stuck on this. I need $100,000 in my pocket. And they were 13 days from the auction. And we were the most we could pay for the property. We could get them $50,000 in their pocket. So now they're at the precipice of one of two new realities. Reality one, logically, is they're going to lose their house to auction. Now they might get some surplus funds back, but honestly, it's not going to be $50,000. Option two is you get $50,000 in your pocket. And when we told this guy, here are your two options, they said, they were basically like, no, I don't think so. Like, we need $100,000. We won't take 50. And we're like, but you're going to get zero and lose the house. And they chose to get zero.
Yeah. That is a fantastic example of how sellers and all of us react to situations not out of logic. I love it. I don't love not acting out of logic, but I appreciate that example, because that is a real demonstration of this. And so what's helpful is understanding those 5 stages of change, and really 4 are the most important, actually really 3. So I want to just break them down a little bit for your awareness as you're listening to this, because if you can just start to use this as a lens when you're talking with people and start to recognize where they are, it will be a game changer for how you choose to approach it. And I love Lindsay's training on intuitive sales, because it is very aligned to this. So the first stage is pre-contemplation. And that is simply the person you're talking to has no intention to change your behavior and no intention to do anything. They're pretty much either unaware or completely in denial. So that would be situations where we've gone knocking on the door of somebody that we know is going to be in foreclosure, or is actually going to go to auction. They're already in foreclosure. We go knock on their door and they're like, what? Like, they're sticking their head in the sand, and they're not even willing. They haven't reached out. They haven't entertained any solutions, because they're unwilling to even, or unable to even grasp the fact that there is something that needs to happen, that there's a problem. Adam, do you any situations come to mind where you've seen that with a seller or a potential seller?
Yeah, like a lot. There are there's a lot of cases where they're not problem aware, a lot of cases. And to your point of like, hey, one of the things that Lindsay talks about is like, I have a piece of paper and I'm like, hey, I actually found this on the county website that says, you know, your house is going to auction. Were you even aware? Like just the way that that's asked and takes the pressure off, and the way that it's kind of curious and caring is the start oftentimes of our conversation. And sometimes they're not aware of the problem. So like you have to get through that. You have to really surface the problem to even come to the point where they can attach to a different result.
Yeah, I love that example. And you hit it on the head, Adam, that when we discover somebody's in pre-contemplation, it is about being able to give them real information, education about what's going to happen, because they don't know that. If they don't even know there's a problem, how are they going to know what the potential consequences of that problem are? And so going back to the foreclosure process, I mean, I would have no idea what a foreclosure process is unless I had gone through it or unless I helped people go through it. Like the average person doesn't know that. And so as the investor, it's important for us to get smart on that. As an example, if that's one of the types of sellers that you work with, get smart on that and help them understand exactly what they're in for and what's going to happen. Just lay it out. This is non-judgmental. This is just being, as Adam and Lindsay say a lot, being curious and just being compassionate by helping them understand what is up ahead, you know, the road that they're potentially on. So that's pre-contemplation. You're not selling at this stage. If you try to sell, you're selling to somebody that doesn't even believe that they need what you have. They're going to shut you out right away. This is part of what I saw in my husband. And so let's move to the next stage, which is contemplation. And this is where the seller is aware of the problem and they are starting to think about how to overcome it, but they just really haven't committed to what they're going to do yet. So I had a conversation yesterday, as an example, with a gentleman. We sent out our second batch of mailers and yay, we're getting responses. And there was a gentleman that called. I know, so exciting. There was a gentleman that called us. He lives in a small town outside of one of our areas that we're marketing to, and he has 5 rentals in that town. And he said, well, I hadn't really thought about selling them yet, but I saw your letter, so I'm reaching out. I'm just kind of curious what that would look like. And so my husband had a conversation. I ended up calling him back, had a longer conversation. He's 80, his wife is 80. They've had a good run with the rentals, but he is recognizing this is probably not the lifestyle that he wants to continue to have as he's 80. And so now he's in the contemplation stage. He is aware that he is going to want to make a change, and he's just starting to think about what are the different options. And this is great. This is, I love this stage. And so the contemplation is where you can start, you start asking a lot of questions to try to understand, what are they thinking about? What ideas and, forms of action are they considering or have they considered? And what are they exploring? So this is what seems like, and Adam, you let me know what your thoughts are. This is what it seems like a lot of that sales call is really about, understanding the full contemplation stage that the seller or the potential seller is in. It's lots of questions. It's really getting clear and helping them get clear on what they want. Because a lot of times, as humans, it's easy for us to say we don't want what we're in right now, but we don't really know what we do want. And so this is an opportunity to ask questions and to help them start to get clear on what they want their future to look like and what it would look like if they didn't have this problem house or problem tenant or whatever it is. So this contemplation stage is really important. But what I saw my husband do is he has a lot of competence in what he does as a realtor, as a broker. He would have these conversations with the pre-contemplation and at the very early stages of the contemplation stages with sellers who are just starting to think about or maybe not really sure yet. He would come and be like, and have the assumption that of course they're going to sell. And he's just trying to make sure that they understand that we're the best option. but he didn't realize that they weren't even committed to selling. And that was the gap that he was missing. And as you're listening to this, I just encourage you to think, how am I approaching the potential sellers? Am I assuming that, of course, they're going to sell? It's obvious. Like, this is the only solution to their problem. And now you're just trying to convince them that, or show them, demonstrate that you're the right solution, or are they not even convinced that they need a solution? Adam, do you have any thoughts to share at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And we have it's all about the questions you ask, right? And the journey that you take them on. And there's a lot of studies on sales that say, the sales people who talk 30% of the time and let the client talk 70% of the time are producing better results. And the reason that you would talk so much less is because you're asking great questions and then you're being an active listener, which, Sheri, you're like the best in the world at. Well practiced, obviously. The questions and how you frame the questions and how you say the questions can be the difference between helping somebody and not helping somebody. And I love your background because this is something you've done as a profession, but for us as real estate people, we're like running the numbers. We're like, hey, you need to do this deal because of X, Y, and Z. And the truth is you focus on problem awareness in the framework, which is what you were just talking about. You focus on solution awareness. And one of my favorite parts of the framework is focusing on consequence questions. What happens, well, maybe I'll do this. Well, what happens if that doesn't work? What happens if that doesn't work? And it's helping them to come through these potential options in their mind that they maybe haven't actually fully explored. And then they come to the end of our conversations and they're like, yeah, you know what? I think going with you is the result I'm looking for. It is the best option. And having a structured sales process, a way to help people that is repeatable and you can run time over time again, and you almost can get predictable responses and then therefore predictable results, which is really important when you're marketing. If I go back kind of the real estate side.
Yeah, I love that. As you were sharing that, Adam, it reminded me also that our personality sometimes gets in the way of this kind of sales. And those of you that are far more direct, and if you use a disc profile or whatever you use, if you're like the, let's just cut to the chase and get to the bottom line, you're probably going to blow past those really important questions because you're wanting to get to the answer, yes or no. Like, how do I convince him yes? But you kind of have to put that impulse to tell people what to do on the back burner and just kind of let the process go with questions. And I've got 4 teenagers right now, and if you don't have kids yet, or they're younger, like super young, I'm sure you can think back to your childhood when you were an adolescent. How did you respond when people told you what to do? Was it like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for letting me know the error of my ways? Of course I'm going to do
resistance.
No, exactly. Resistance. That is human nature. And so when people are in the pre-contemplation or contemplation stage, they are going to put up resistance. They're going to dig their heels in. And that's why these questions are so important. Don't blow past them and think, I'll just bypass the system. Like, I can get them to say yes. They're going to put up resistance. And so by asking these well thought out questions and being curious and non-judgmental and all of these things, it's really important. Otherwise, they're going to give you resistance and it's not going to be successful. All right. So we talked about the pre-contemplation, the contemplation. Now is the preparation. This is the fun part because this is typically where they've committed, they've said yes, and now they're actually starting to take action, or they're kind of planning things out. And this is where I think it's really important opportunity for us as investors that we don't leave kind of the preparation stage up to the seller, that we can help them. We can ask them. I had another conversation yesterday with a different seller that, to be quite honest, my husband was frustrated with because he got her to say, yes, we'll sell to you. come at this date, this time to walk the property so we could solidify what the pricing would make sense. And she called him the morning of and said, canceled. Well, she didn't reschedule with him. And he's like, okay, Sheri, come on, do your magic. Like, call her. He's like, he's frustrated, right? So I called her yesterday and had a great conversation with her. And there was a single thing that she was uncertain about, that her sister was talking in her ear, got her thinking, well, maybe this is going to be an issue and this is going to be an issue. So she kind of like didn't know what to do and just kind of like halted the whole thing. And so it was a simple conversation, but it was just asking a lot of questions. And so I asked her multiple times, like, what else? And this is from the intuitive sales process. What else could get in the way of you doing this? What else might be a challenge coming up? And so she presented like what the challenges were, and I were able to help her understand title issue. Title wasn't going to be an issue. We've got a great title company. They do all the research. And the other issue was that she's buying a mobile home on the other side, and she's using some of the funds to pay off the mobile home. And the mobile home company is saying like there might be a delay in getting it set and ready. So she didn't want to commit to a closing date because what if her next home isn't ready yet? And so I was able to squash that fear. I'm like, oh, no worries. Like, we will totally work with whatever time frame you need. And it was just asking those questions and being curious and following up. And so I was able to help her in the preparation phase think about, okay, well, what if this happens? Well, this is how we could help prepare. This is what are some of the things that could happen, because she doesn't know the process as well as we do, because we do this all the time. This is her first time ever doing this. So we had a significant opportunity to join with the seller in their preparation phase so that they feel even more competent and or more comfortable in the process, and see us more as an ally rather than somebody that's swooping in and stealing the property from them, which I know is sometimes how sellers can feel. Adam, what are your thoughts about this preparation stage?
Well, first off, great job on asking the right questions. And I think one thing asking the questions is not the hardest thing. You can have a list of questions, you can ask them. There's really 3 parts of that, Sheri, that you model well just in your daily life that makes you awesome. Is your tone, which you mentioned, like the tone in which you say something, having that curious tone, because I don't want people to miss this part, is when you're curious, it reduces resistance. Mm-hmm. People genuinely want to help other people. So if they feel like this person needs an answer, so let me help you. It just changes the frame of mind a little bit because you're just curious. Like, as an example, in Lindsay's opening or in our team's opening, they say, hey, Sheri, it's just Adam. Did you have any blah, 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 right? So it's like, hey, just Adam. Like, yeah, let me help you. You sound curious and confused a little bit. Curious being one. And then the other thing that I see all the time is pace. How quickly you talk. You're so smart. You do this so many times. Your team does this so many times. You know so much about real estate that you're like excited to give these people all the solutions. In reality, Andy McFarlane used to say this all the time, is a confused mind says no. So you don't want to overwhelm the sellers. They're already overwhelmed. That's why they're talking to you. So just slowing down and bringing that pace to a place where it's non-confrontational, non-alarming, and the things that you're saying are going to land much better. And the thing that makes Lindsay so good isn't just the fact that she knows when to ask these right questions, but it's the way that she delivers it. And if you hear Lindsay, like if you go back and listen to Lindsay's podcast or her presentations and how she teaches this stuff, you would be like, wow, she's like, I could go to sleep listening to her. She sounds so soothing and so welcoming. But like in real life, Lindsay's like, da 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 da. She's a complete firecracker. But in her conversation, she's able to be way more intentional, which makes her way more effective.
Those are really, really important factors. Thank you for bringing that up. I had my husband listen to my call that I had with the gal yesterday, and he was so funny. I prefaced, I said, here's what I was intentionally doing. I was slowing my pace down. I told him all of those things because I knew that he would be like, oh, you didn't sound like confident. Like, that was the point. Like, I didn't want to come in sounding slick at all. And so he did make the comment. He's like, there were some awkward pauses. And I was like, well, that was slowing the pace. So it might feel really slow and awkward to you, but I would be willing to bet that the other side is going to respond to that appropriately. And it's going to calm them down. I mean, if you think about it, think about somebody who's like in a panic attack. If you respond to them with like panic and like high pressure, like it feeds into it. So somebody has to calm things down and give breathing room. And it's probably not going to be the seller. It's got to be you. You've got to take ownership of that. All right. So the fourth piece is the super fun part, and that's action. This is going to be, the part where you're doing the transaction and things are going well and they're actually following through on their thing. And so during this action part, what we can do as investors to help solidify the transaction and reduce the likelihood that they're going to back out is to affirm them, encourage them, and continue to support them. I've heard this a lot where the seller has said, everybody in my family thinks I'm making the wrong decision. They're trying to convince me otherwise. They're trying to, they've got all these grand ideas, but we know, and I heard this from one of the other investors on the sales call a couple of days ago, I heard them say about one of their sellers that everybody's telling her she shouldn't do it. But guess what? All those other people also aren't providing auctions out. They're telling her not to do it, but then that would leave her high and dry and she would have no solution. So what we can do as an investor during this action phase and during the whole thing, quite frankly, but especially during the action phase, is to acknowledge their courage. And I know this is a really hard decision for you. I know there's a lot of emotions involved. If they're selling a deceased parent's house or something, just acknowledge that what they're doing isn't easy or the things that they've told you, and just encourage them and remind them of like, oh, you know what? Once you get through this, that house that you've got waiting for you on the other side, that family trip that you're going to take with some of the proceeds, remind them of the reasons why they're doing this and why the decision that they did make and the action they're taking is aligned with their best life and their, with their best interests in mind. That is, I think, the most significant thing that we can do during this action phase. Support, encourage, and remind them of how this really is a really great decision for them.
We talk about this in a more programmatic way to a certain degree with buyer's remorse, right? With your sellers. It's yes. Like, even if you get an agreement and they say they realize this is the right solution for their problem, they still have a little bit of anxiety around it. So just continuing to affirm that decision and being helpful and how you're going to be helpful. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about novations. This is a totally different topic, but the interesting thing about a novation is like it basically just gets listed and people are like, well, why wouldn't they just list it with a realtor? And that's a great logical question because they could get the most money that way and we would help them to do that too. But that's not the problem we're solving. And I showed this example of this particular house and the 5-star review this lady left us because we really helped her to go from attaching to that new result and discovering the problem that we were solving and all these stages you're talking about. And, at the end, because we supported her and we affirmed her decision and helped her by asking really great questions, she's like, we're like the best thing ever to her. She leaves us a 5-star review. She's like, this was so helpful. But during the process, she felt heavy and anxiety and all of those feelings you would get with all this uncertainty in front of you. And they don't see they see the solution. You might ask them great questions. They understand it. They're like, okay, I know this is right, but they're still a little nervous about it. Is this going to happen? Are they really going to help solve my problem? And then you solve their problem and they have this massive relief. When people talk about, investors, you're just buying houses cheap from people. It's like, you have no idea. We're solving life problems routinely, things that most people are incapable of solving. And frankly, some of these people are hugging you and crying at the end. And you've really made a meaningful impact on their lives.
Yeah, I love that story, the stories of that. And that's true. And the action phase, I think, as investors kind of melds into the maintenance phase, which is the fifth stage. So let's, in the context of if you're a cigarette smoker, you're quitting smoking, you've quit, but the maintenance phase is staying quit, which is one of the most biggest challenges with addictions is staying quit. And so the way that I see that working in this type of process for investors and sellers, the maintenance is an opportunity where we can continue to affirm that they made a great decision and that they've got their whole life ahead of them. And that can be with sending them a letter, a card, a gift or something after closing that just reaffirms like it was a pleasure working with you, being able to collaborate with you on solving this problem that was looming in your life. And we're so excited about the future that you have ahead of you and how this burden has lifted. And we wish nothing but the best in the future. And if there's anything that we can help you with or help anybody that you know with in the future, it would be our pleasure to do so. That is an opportunity to continue to solidify that relationship and increase the likelihood of that 5-star review if you haven't gotten one yet. And also it decreases the chance of them going back and, saying something bad-mouthing you or your organization afterwards. So
100%.
Always affirming and reaffirming the relationship and their decision and them. Because it's hard if you think about it in your own life. If somebody is for you and they're cheerleading you on and they're encouraging you and they're saying, and they're helping you realize the decisions you're making are really good, how often do you then turn around and get mad at them and unless they have a significant personality disorder, they're probably not going to do that. So this is an opportunity to support them, but also kind of that preservation of our business.
Yeah, I love that. So what can you recap those kind of 5 stages again?
Yes. So there's the pre-contemplation stage where they don't really even understand there's a problem or they're pretty unaware, they're ignorant, they're in denial. Then there's a contemplation stage where now they've realized, oh, okay, there really is something that needs to get addressed. Do I address it? Do I let it go? What are my options? Then there's the preparation stage where they've started now to make a commitment to some sort of action, and hopefully it's selling to you. And then the preparation so that is the preparation stage. And then the action stage is where now they are actively doing that strategy, that problem solving solution. They're working with you to close the sale, to sell it to you. And then there's the maintenance phase, and that's after the sale, which is a little less important in this context. But because Adam, I know that, being prior military, we're used to acronyms. How about Peace PAM, PCPAM? Does that work?
Peace PAM, PCPAM.
Yeah. So preparation, contemplation, pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, Peace PAM. There you go.
Would it be okay if I gave maybe some top questions to ask sellers to help take people through this?
Yes, I think that's fantastic. And there are specific strategies embedded in each of the stages to help the person you're working with kind of move through that stage. So that could be like a whole series of podcasts. But yes, Adam, I think giving some very concrete examples would be perfect.
Okay, so like one of the first, because you're really like in the beginning, you're really trying to understand the problem. One of the first questions I would ask is after you introduce yourself and that whole spiel, these are just a few. So it's like, what was it about our ad, our postcard, our website that really caught your attention and had you call us today? Because on the ads, it has all kinds of stuff about selling fast, foreclosure, and it really helps you get straight to the problem. Then after identifying, like, do you live in the property? Is it tenant? Is it rental? What kind of property is this? I would ask some questions that were a little more Socratic and open-ended, like, what came up recently that made you want to explore selling now? Or ideally, when would you like to be done dealing with the problems of this property? To kind of understand what was the event now? Like, what's the real problem? Because you're going to get stuff that's surface level, and they're going to tell you something. And we always go 2 to 3 deeper on every question. Like, when you say this, what exactly do you mean? To get them to elaborate and elaborate and elaborate so that we can uncover it. And then kind of to your point of, like, well, I might have all these other options. We ask them, like, you know, what have you tried already to solve this problem? Let's say you sold this house and finally got what you wanted. How different would life be? Just some real things that bring their thought process through it. And then, of course, we always ask about the property, but not until later. We don't go how many beds, baths. That's all stuff you can look up. And then they start to, as you ask them what they've already tried to do, they start to kind of like go into, well, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. I haven't tried it, but I will. Then that's when we really go deep into the kind of consequence type questions. You know, what happens if this drags out another 3 to 4 months and this problem continues? Between me and you, Dr. Sheri Fluellen, how important is it to be done with this situation? So like that psychologically really brings us to a deeper one-on-one conversation. Just saying between me and you. If I don't know why and the science behind why that works so well, but it's, you know, people are like, oh, well, between us, let me tell you the real truth.
It's like saying off the record.
Yeah, off the record. And the other one that I really love is if you do get the result X, Y, and Z, the thing you're saying you want, what would be your biggest concern then? And going through all these things, because like nobody gives you everything up front. You're going deeper and deeper, you know? And then I think, you know, we talk about going for the close and like finally getting the agreement signed, which I think this is like where the rubber meets the road. It's like, if we did X, Y, and Z, do you feel like it would be helpful? They're like, yeah, oh yeah, like that would be helpful. It's like, okay, cool. Then we can go into talking about signing an agreement and moving forward. So it's just like those little questions, those tactical questions right there could be the difference between you winning and not winning and helping somebody.
I love it. One of the things that I see is for some of us as much as, yes, I'm a psychologist and I deal with conflict and I help people through it, I still naturally to my core and like somewhat conflict avoidant. Like I don't like, even when my kids are like bickering with each other, I can feel my blood pressure rise. My husband, on the other hand, is another personality type. Like he's all like, yeah, like let me in it. You know, he's ready to like be part of it.
Let's go.
So if you're more like me, where you're not wanting to introduce conflict and you're wanting things to go smoothly, you might avoid asking questions such as, well, what other things are you thinking about doing? You might not, because you might think that, well, if I ask that question, am I actually planting the seed in their mind that there might be other options? I will tell you that is an unhelpful thought in your own mind, because chances are they are thinking of other things. And so it is more important to ask these questions that might feel a bit uncomfortable, that you're like, I don't know what they're going to say. How do I rebut if they say that they're thinking about this other thing? Like all of that you can figure out. But if you don't ask those questions, there are going to be some things that they are processing that you have no influence over. And it's going to end up being more challenging for you in this process. So I just wanted to call out that I see people avoiding these like awkward, uncomfortable, slightly potentially conflicting questions for that reason. But I encourage you, don't avoid it.
Yeah, that's I think the difference between success and not success. Asking the questions that bring conflict, and honestly, that's not really for you. It's for them to wrestle with.
Yeah.
If they're going to move forward in their life. A lot of these people are stuck. You know, you think about the foreclosure person example you used. They're stuck. Like they were stuck. They didn't pay their bills. It got really heavy, so they did nothing. They put their head in the sand. So you're really doing these people a service by asking them those conflict type questions, those questions that make them really get on one side of the fence or the other and take the next step to get out of the problem that they're in, hopefully with you.
Wow. I very passionate about this conversation as my husband and I have really started to dig in real life to having these conversations with sellers, which has just been recent because before that we were just getting things that had already been put under contract by wholesalers or whatever. It was a different conversation. So he and I are both having to like dig to the deep recesses of who we are and what we know and like figure this thing out. And it's fun. It's scary. It's frustrating at times, but I know that this is where the money is made. If we're not willing to grow as investors, you're going to end up being as stuck as some of your sellers are at some point. So we need to allow ourselves the vulnerability to fail, to ask questions of people like Adam and others around you, like, I'm bombing in this. What do I do? What do I change? This is how we grow.
I would say Lindsay is better, but yes, I'm always here to help. And yeah, I totally agree. There's something to the saying that you're the 5 people you surround yourself with, whatever person put that thing on the internet. You know, if you're in a room with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6. If you're in the room with 5 fit people, you'll be the 6. If you're in the room with 5 idiots, you'll be the 6. It really is. And if you think about this as a parent, it's the same thing for our kids, why we're so protective over their friends group. It's like, you know, even if they're hanging out with somebody we don't love, we're having parental conversations like, yeah, I don't know if we should let them hang out with them, but it's going to make them mad. What are we supposed to do? I mean, you know, your kids are of that age, Sheri. So I think like it's the same thing for us being in that room with people. It's not always a tactic. It's just like, oh, I'm taking your confidence and I now have it. Yeah. So it's just the way things are and I'm capable of doing it too. It's really powerful. And, you know, I'm so appreciative. I really enjoyed Park City with everybody. I personally got a ton out of it, looking at other people's businesses and what they were doing and how they were structuring their teams and what they were doing with their marketing and what they were doing with the rehabs. I mean, we have some like really impressive flipping businesses who are so dialed in on their construction and the rehab and their project management that they're better than I am by far. And I'm like, just like in awe of it.
Yeah, it is really powerful being around other people and being intentional about that.
Yeah. Love this conversation, Dr. Fluellen. I'm always grateful that you'll spend time with me and I can't wait to do the next one. This was a good one. We might do a part 2, a follow-up and go even deeper because I'm just like, I have like a page and a half of notes here and I'm like, this is such good science-backed stuff. I love it.
I love it too. And Adam, thank you for letting me, just talk about what's on my mind and what is real in my life this week, because I think it helps me and hope that it helps our listeners in whatever stage of the real estate investing they're at as well.
Hi, my name is Terry. My question is, who do I call to fund my first flip?
All right, let's answer this question, Terry, thank you so much for providing that. Who do I call to fund my first flip? Dr. Fluellen, let's start with you.
Oh my gosh. So what came to mind there is two things. One might be a flip institutional company that specializes in funding flips. That might be an option, although I am aware that a lot of them prefer having experienced flippers that they lend to. So there could be some out-of-pocket money there if that is all that you depend on. The other thing that came to mind, which my husband and I do a lot of, and that is working with people that we know and trust us as private money lenders. And if you're in the position where you have a deal and you need to get it funded, start making phone calls like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how I would love for you to partner with me on. I would encourage you to have some structure to how you're presenting it. The more structure you have, the more professional it's going to look. And it's not like you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I need money. And, kind of in this frenetic panic mode. That's the worst thing that we can do when we're talking with people about money, is for them to feel like we're desperate and we need something. But if our listener or anybody else that's listening to this doesn't have their first deal quite there yet, but they're like thinking about it in advance, that is the perfect time to start cultivating your sphere of influence, to let them know, if they don't yet, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm working on real estate investing. I'm looking for my first flip, or I'm looking for my next flip. Would love to see if investing, partnering with us as an investor, lending the money to us for this deal, if that would be a good fit for your savings plan, for your retirement plan. So being able to have that conversation before you need it is the most ideal. But I would say the biggest thing is just let everybody know what you're doing. I see a lot that when people start a new thing, this is a mindset thing here, that when you start a new venture, we don't want people to see us starting out small. So we kind of keep quiet what we're doing, and we don't want to let the world know until like we're already successful. Then we can tell everybody what we're doing. That's a really unhelpful mindset. It's okay that people see you beginning. Just let everybody know what you're doing. Like, rip the Band-Aid off. It might feel uncomfortable at first. You're going to have some, negative self-talk, probably. Work through it and just let people know what you're doing, because you'll probably find that they're more interested in your side of the ring than they would be oppositional to you.
I love this question. I think because of Bill, our community is probably one of the best communities of capital raisers, people who get money for real estate deals. And you're spot on. There's really two main sources of money to flip a house that are others, not your own money, which is a hard money lender, like Dr. Fluellen said, a institutional lender. We use pretty routinely Chiavi, Renovo, and American Heritage in our community because they do great terms for our people. There are many of them out there. Central Lending's another one, but like step one is go see what you're qualified for with a hard money lender who specializes in fix and flip loans. So that's the easy institutional money that Sheri's talking about. That's like going to a bank almost, but it's specific to fix and flip. The shortcomings of that is the less experience you have, the less favorable the terms and the less amount of money. So as an example, if your house purchase is $100,000 and it's your first one ever, most hard money lenders will only give you 75 to 90% of that $100,000 and plus the rehab, which comes with some strings attached. So how do you get the rest of the money? That's usually the next question. Typically what happens is you have more people than you could even imagine around you that have money. And you might be thinking, I don't know anybody with money. Well, you just don't know where the money is at. And what people don't tell you is that most of the lending that's happening, private money lending that's happening, is coming out of 401ks and self-directed IRAs. Most people don't even know you could do that. There is $17 trillion in self-directed IRAs today. So when people say there's no money out there, those are self-directed IRAs, meaning those are coming from people, like a person's IRA account that they can self-direct into real estate and alternative asset. So there's only 360 million people in the United States, and there's $17 trillion in self-directed IRA money available in the United States. Some of it's obviously employed in assets already, but there's tons of opportunities. So learning how to get, having the conversation, see who's in your warm circle, family and friends around, who is interested, just by putting yourself out there, shedding your current identity and telling people what you're doing. I'm a real estate investor. I'm getting ready to buy my first flip. I have opportunities, and I'm looking for partners who want to be passive. All those things that Sheri said, and start to attract and figure out who those people are in your life who already trust you because they know you and want to invest with you because they know you, not necessarily because of your deal. And the last part I'll say about this is the thing that I see people do that hurts them more than anything is they talk about needing money. I need money for my real estate deals. Not really. You have an opportunity. What you're looking for is somebody who's the right fit for it. And that's this year we've helped investors, private investors, employ $2 million just this year, 2025. I'm from Detroit. I grew up in a illiterate family. Like, I don't know people with money. I was in the military, so I know some military people who have a little bit of money, but I don't know any rich people. Maybe Dr. Fluellen's the richest person I know. Who knows? So
no, highly unlikely.
So I mean, the truth is you're putting self-limiting beliefs on what you're capable of and what you're making assumptions about people around you and who you know that has money, and you have this I need money mindset, and you need to change that to I have an opportunity mindset and find out who the right fit for the opportunity is.
I love that. My first investor, private money lender, was my parents. And
usually, yeah.
Yes. My brother and his wife and their family, her mom died. She inherited some money. That's been another source. My husband was at his dentist's office and was like getting work done. And he had a conversation with his dentist. They also have invested in quite a few of our flips. Like, these are just some examples of, yes, have the conversation. You never know what's going to happen.
Anybody ever ask what you do? You say, I'm a real estate investor. I help people get their capital, their money, their savings, their 401ks into the real estate asset by partnering with me on my deals. And they're like, what? Tell me more.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So thanks, Dr. Fluellen. This was an awesome episode. Really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Adam.
For everybody, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Do me a favor, share this on your Instagram, on your Facebook, leave us a 5-star review, and we'll see you on the next one.